Hello, everybody. Welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty, and welcome to my monthly makes video, where I am inspired by real-world products, and I create my own versions of paper crafty supplies to use in my own crafting. I have a couple things to share today, so let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start with this little truck image, and you will see from the inspiration what the original looked like. I made this truck from my Cricut, and this was a file that just is in the Cricut library, so you either need to purchase the image or have a subscription to the library feature. I already own this one from many years ago, so this is the one I decided to use. I did use the slice feature in my Cricut in order to create all these extra pieces. Now you can tell that this is a tire, but it's not perfect. I will just trim off this extra with a pair of scissors, and that's because the Cricut slice feature isn't a perfect function, but it helps if you want to manipulate images within Cricut itself. I did cut out some of the pieces in a metallic silver, and I've got a bumper here for my truck. I've got, I created chrome, what are those called? Fenders to go on my truck. And then the inside piece of when I cut out this tire portion, I don't want to lose that because I will inset that into the rest of my image and create the hubcap. So let me assemble all of this and show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, we are almost done with this little truck. However, I want to add some vellum behind the window, which is why I didn't cut it out like I did the rest of these pieces. I will add another piece of silver behind the door handle, and then I will add a piece of random scrap paper behind my wheels so that I can glue my hubcaps in place. All right, I let everything dry before I trim off the rest of this vellum, because I don't want it to wiggle on me. And I'm just gonna, I kind of tip my scissors to get the blade to go more under the red paper so that I'm not actually trimming the red. It's not a perfect technique, but it does help kind of follow that edge a little bit better to get a smoother cut. All right, was there anything else I needed to trim? Yes, the vellum is poking out. I just used scraps of the vellum from doing the window, and I can just nip off those little bits that are poking out. And there we go. We've got our little truck. Next up, I was inspired by the windmill, which I don't own anything like that. I don't think. There might be something hiding somewhere. I have all of these leftover pieces of metallic paper from doing my truck, and the windmill, if you'll notice, is just a series of shapes. We've got circles for the windmill part, and even the blades on the windmill are a part of the circle. So we're going to create some circles and cut it in ways that we can create blades. And the rest of the tower of the windmill is just straight lines, whether they're crossed into triangles or they're just straight lines building the tower. So we are going to use these to do this by hand. I do not own an image of a windmill in my Cricut, so I can't cut it out there. I could buy one, but I don't want to do that. I've got materials and skills in order to create it myself. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to start this process with nesting circle dies. This is my favorite set of nested circle dies. I've had it for a while. It was made by My Favorite Things, but they're no longer in business. They shut down very recently. At any rate, any set will work. I'm going to start recreating the largest circle that we will cut down in order to make the blades of the windmill. I might need to go to my stash and find some more silver. Hopefully I have enough. I'm going to risk it and we're going to go for it. How big do I want my windmill to be? Imagine this size on a 12 by 12 layout. I think that's too big. I think that might be a good size, and that will stretch my paper just a little bit farther. Quick tip, when taping down onto a metallic paper, try to keep your tape off of the portion of the image you'll be keeping, because adhesives will mar the finish of the metallic and reduce the shine. So I'm going to try and carefully put it off to the side. To save time while running this through my die cut machine, I'm also going to create a couple more pieces. There is a thin ring as part of the image, and we're going to create that by using 2 nested pieces together. And while it won't be as thin as the original image, we're going to do our best. I think that one's too close in size to the windmill blades, so let's try. I think that'll work. So we're going to put these 2 down, and I'm going to try and just line them up so that they create a bit of an even circle. The closeness of the dies should prevent the sticky from pushing into the piece I want to keep, and that should be okay. Now we need the very center piece of our windmill, so I'm just going to use the smallest circle. All right, let's see how we did. Main circle. Our ring, fairly even. That piece I may be able to save for something else. And then our inner circle. Looking good. Before we move on, I want to make sure that my wedges work out, because that's going to be the hardest part of this project. And if that goes wrong, I might need to rethink my project. All right, I'm going to work on the back side of this so that I can draw lines on there. I'm going to line it up on a grid so that it is about centered in one of the squares, and that's going to help me create more even lines. I'm going to go ahead and tape this down so that it doesn't slip and slide on me. I will need to move the tape as I work since it will be in the way somewhat. I'm going to start with a vertical line. I will do diagonal lines from each corner. And then we'll go ahead and move the tape. And let's do that horizontal line. All right, now we have some evenly spaced wedges, but we don't want whole wedges. There needs to be gaps in between each wedge. So I'm just going to ever so slightly, and with a clear ruler, you can pick some kind of mark on the ruler to be your guide. I'm just going to ever so slightly, probably halfway in between the existing marks, I am just going to draw a line on either side. Okay, this is the central line that forms the wedge. But really, we want to cut outside of that line here and here so that there is a gap in between the leftover wedge pieces. So I think this is going to work. Let me keep going and show you what it looks like in the end. I'm going to trace our circle that will end up in the middle of our piece so that when I cut, I don't have to cut all the way through. I just need to cut a little bit past this circle so that all the wedges will stay held together. I think we got something that's starting to look like a windmill. Let's do some assembly before we move on to the next step. All right, here is a look at the windmill as it is so far. Next step is to create that tower. I think this piece will have enough length and enough width to cut out several straight, thin pieces to create our tower. In fact, it might be longer than we need. So I'm going to start by slicing a couple of wider pieces to be the outer brace of our tower. How wide does our piece need to be? Not sure. This is kind of trial and error. I'm going to start with 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to try and hide that tower behind one of our windmill wedges, and the same thing on this side. And I think 3/8 of an inch is working. I will create our cross pieces in 3/8 of an inch and then our X pieces in a thinner version. Glue dries slower on a slick surface like the metallic, so I am using this wedge to help press everything in place for just a couple moments before I move on. All right, my project is dry. However, I did get some glue that leaked out onto things, and that's pretty easy to clean up, especially on a glass mat or acrylic with a little bit of rubbing alcohol and a rag. And there we go. We have a windmill. I did get a little bit of adhesive squeezed out right there. I'm going to try and clean that up with a Q-tip and a little bit of alcohol. All right, here is a final look at our two projects. We have our cute little pickup truck for the farm and a wonderful windmill. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you got something useful out of this video, and if you did, I would really appreciate a thumbs up because that goes a long way to helping YouTube get my videos out to more crafters. And if you would like to subscribe, totally free, it just makes my videos show up in your subscription feed. Please go ahead and do that. And as always, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear your feedback. And until next time, I hope you have an artful day.